I hate those moments when you go into a new season and it feels like you're watching the same show that you watched the previous season all over again. Unwanted Undead Adventures really does feel like Berserk of Gluttony all over again. Now, to be fair, the source material for Unwanted Undead Adventure technically came out a year before Berserk of Gluttony, but you can honestly see the inspiration between the two of them. Both featuring weak protagonists that really badly want to get stronger. They're both cursed somehow. They both are, over time, losing themselves and fearing that they will become essentially an enemy of mankind. And yes, they both have a mask to cover up their identity. However, with those similarities aside, Unwanted Undead Adventure has so much more going for it in comparison. Let's face it, Berserk of Gluttony was an absolute throwaway show. That show, by the time the season ended, I had already forgotten about it. While Unwanted Undead Adventurer has a lot going for it already from these first few episodes. But this is my thoughts on those first 3 episodes, so let's jump right into it. Unwanted Undead Adventurer opens up with an adventurer who is trying to become Mithril rank, and he's going into this dungeons, into this little labyrinth, and eventually he finds a secret path. And when he goes into the secret path, he ends up running into a humongous magical dragon. He doesn't even get a chance to move. The dragon takes him out. But he wakes up and he's still alive, question mark? Yes, this adventurer has been turned into a skeleton, an undead. And he kind of freaks out for a little bit, but then over time, as he's walking around, he ends up attacking the skeleton, realizes that, yes, he's a lot more sluggish than he used to be, but he's still able to take out the skeleton. But then he recalls the words of his friend, Lorraine. Now, see, Lorraine is actually a doctor who has been studying in both monsters and plant life and all this kind of stuff. She does a lot of studies. And one of the theories that she had is this idea that monsters, over time, if they kill other monsters, they will actually gain experience and then they can evolve into a stronger monster. And so Rent, now a skeleton walking around in this dungeon, realizes, maybe if I kill a bunch of other monsters, eventually I can turn into a ghoul, and then, at least as a ghoul, I can disguise myself and be able to return home. So he goes through this whole process of killing other monsters over and over again. And then over time, he kind of realizes that he's actually getting stronger, even to the point where he's stronger than his past self. Yes, and eventually, he does evolve. He actually becomes a ghoul. Well, as he's continuing to kill monsters and hoping that one day maybe he can evolve into maybe a vampire that will look much more like human and thus he won't be hunted down and exorcised by the church, he eventually bumps into Rena, who is currently in that dungeon trying to get stronger as well, but additionally, it seems like she was supposed to meet up with Brent at some point. Well, Brent's kind of watched her from a distance, knowing that if he confronts her as a ghoul, she's gonna freak out. Eventually, Rena is like cornered by a skeleton, and Brent comes out and saves her. Well, he's been practicing for quite a while to figure out how he can actually communicate with like his decayed throat and everything like that, but he eventually is able to kind of get the words out to communicate to Rena, saying, "Hey, my name is Rent. I need your help. Can you help me out? Can you go back to the village and buy me some clothes so that I can disguise myself? I used to be human, but I'm dead, but I'm not dead." Well, Rena, having been saved by him, agrees to this, and she reluctantly goes back to the village, buys him some stuff, comes back, and yes, gears him out with a cloak and everything to kind of cover up his entire body. But unfortunately, additionally, yes, knows that he's going to have to cover up his face. She bought for really, really cheap a mask, and it turns out this mask is actually cursed. And the moment that he puts it on, it just like latches to his face. He can't even get it off. Even using his divine magic, he can't get rid of it. But he's fine. He's like, that's fine. You help me out. I'll eventually save up some money. I'll go to the church and he'll remove it. I can't remove it now anyways because, yes, my face is disgusting. I have to get evolved first. Well, yes, he finally is able to return home. They kind of have to take a side passage because if anybody sees his adventure collar, they'll know who Rent is and be like, what happened to you? He finally gets into the town, ends up ditching Rena because he doesn't want to bring harm to her at some point, because if somebody finds out he's actually a ghoul, they'll blame her. He eventually goes to meet his friend Lorraine, which again is the person that's doing a lot of the research on monsters and stuff. And yes, she kind of believes his story, but at the same time is struggling a bit. See, this is where we get into the concept of, is Rent still Rent? Yes, Lorraine kind of feels Rent in there, like the way that he acts, his demeanor, everything is him, but she's still struggling with the idea that what if he isn't really him? Maybe he became a ghoul, maybe he died, became a ghoul, and just is retaining those memories, and so he's acting out those memories as a ghoul. So there is a little bit of a struggle there, whether he is who he is, which yes, Rent himself, even when he goes back out to adventure to see if he can evolve again, running into other people, he's also having those fears as well. Additionally, there is a question mark of how is Rent going to eat? As a skeleton, he never got hungry. There's nothing that he can, nowhere for the food to go. But as a ghoul, ghouls actually do feed off of flesh and meat, and yes, people. And so he does have a run-in with somebody who has a scar, And yes, he's kind of concerned with the idea that he's now becoming hungry and, yes, being an appeal there to eating a human. That's pretty much what we've established so far. On this side, you're getting a lot more into Lorraine, who again is this friend of Rent. It obviously seems like she does have some sort of care for Rent, as, yes, when she first arrived in this village, he was the one that was there to kind of help her and kind of guide her to give her experience in actually being an adventurer. She got way up to silver rank immediately, but that was because of her schooling. She became like this high-ranking doctor or whatever, and so she had the rank, but not the skills. And yes, a lot of her research is into monsters and all this kind of stuff, so she's very insightful into the situation that Rent's going through, and also kind of experimenting to find out what makes him what he is, and yes, if he can possibly get changed back, or, again, evolve into a vampire or something. So my thoughts on the Unwanted Undead Adventurer. Let's start off with the visuals right off the bat. Yes, very early on when it first opens up and he becomes a skeleton, it was okay CGI. I honestly felt like when I seen the PVs, it looked a lot worse than what it ended up being. It's still not the greatest, but at the same time, it's just one of those unfortunate commonalities, even for like Ufotable. No studio, no animators like to animate skeletons. It's just something they don't do. And so, yes, they use CGI. It looks a little wonky, a little bit kind of off-putting and sticks out quite a bit. But thankfully, the moment that Rent finally gets to becoming a ghoul, it becomes animated again, 2D animated, but still, whenever they run into skeletons, it's still going to be CGI. Other than that, it's okay. The character designs and everything, there's a couple shots where the characters get very wonky very quickly, but I give them credit for at least, keeping things well on model and the action scenes decently animated and all that kind of stuff. Even Rent himself kind of fighting and everything is doing well. Visuals aside, the story of Unwanted Undead Adventurer, like I said, yes, it's very much so like Berserk and Gluttony and this idea. This guy is obsessed with wanting to get stronger because he's always been a low rank. He's actually, I don't know, probably upwards, pretty close to 30 years old, which is kind of a surprise. Having a fantasy show or whatever, any type of anime that actually has a character that's at least above 20 is kind of shocking. It is a character that, honestly, yes, is a little bit irritating, the idea that whenever it comes to what he's going to do, what is his next steps, it's always, I want to become stronger so I can become mithril class. Okay, we just became a skeleton, turned into a ghoul. Your life is completely screwed up. You don't even know if you're alive anymore. You don't even know if you're Rent anymore. And then when you're asked, what are you going to do next? What is your next steps? What are you seeking? He says, I want to become mithril rank. It's like, dude, do you not have any desires in your life besides becoming a mithril? Like, this seems like a really big problem right now that you probably need to fix. But still, I do like, so far, like, the chemistry they've built between the characters, even with Rena. Rena, again, being this random adventurer that was supposed to group up with Rent at some point, but then she went off to this, labyrinth because he was out. And yes, running into her and her having that fear of him, but slowly over time trying to put that fear aside, realizing that Rent is seemingly a person that she can trust, but still having that fear because, yes, he's still a monster. He's still a ghoul. Even with Lorraine, I think that's where like the nugget of most of the chemistry is happening so far. This very talented, very smart girl that is studying and all this stuff, trying to do whatever she can in order to support Rent, despite the fact that he has this curse upon him. And again, having that fears as if it is him or not. I like how they're addressing so far the element of somebody no longer being human, if they're even themselves anymore. And while it hasn't gotten too well into Rent and his internal struggles, I assume that's how they've been handling at least Lorraine so far. They could do something really interesting. And like I said, with the end of episode 3, it feels like that's the direction it's going. It's getting that moment of him having that hunger and going, wait, I keep looking at this guy's scar. Maybe I should get away from him. This doesn't seem like a good thing. So we'll see where that goes with that whole thing. Even with like some side characters like the blacksmith, who just kind of came out of nowhere with this idea of, yes, he goes to this blacksmith to get a new weapon made, and they realize it's him, but they're understanding that it seems like he's not saying anything for a reason. There's something wrong with him, and he's not telling us the full truth, so we'll just play along with it because it's obvious that he's going through something. So it's doing so far pretty decent with all the characters that they've kind of introduced so far. That aside, the mechanic of Rent himself and what he's going through is decently intriguing. Again, I'm going to keep referencing Berserk Gluttony because there's so much similarities here, and it's really easy to kind of pair off of that. With Berserk Gluttony, I liked it in the idea that he was consuming stats and consuming skills, but it became OP way too fast. And at some point, it's like within a few episodes, I didn't care anymore. I just don't show me numbers anymore. I know he's super OP. He's just going to one-shot everything. I don't really care. At least with Rent so far, they're doing a good job of kind of piecemealing it in. The idea here is that he was a human. He wasn't able to get stronger. He was trying to get stronger. He was seeking that glory, but then he dies. And what I like is that it pushes him back. Like now he's a skeleton. Now he's super weak. Like he can barely pick up his sword. He can barely keep it steady and everything. But he somehow manages to utilize spirit arts, which I'm assuming is just like something that can enhance your body. He uses spirit arts in order to attack the opponent, give him that little extra bump. And then over time, when he becomes a ghoul, suddenly he's getting stronger. He's got muscle mass now. He's able to move faster. But then he realizes very quickly, it's almost as if he's leveling up. And it hasn't really established that him as a human, as a normal person, was able to really do that. But now he's able to do that. He's able to do this spiritual evolution that is making his body stronger beyond the bounds of what a normal person would. And I like how it's kind of slowly moving that. And it sort of also indicated the idea that he has all these other arts as well, like divine arts and magics, and along with the spirits arts. Each one of them kind of providing their own benefit that he's able to use in combat. And it seems like as he's evolving, it's making that better. And I'll be curious how quickly they move into the next step. Like, what is beyond the goal? Is it to become, again, like a vampire? Is it to become something else? And how far does that go? Or is it shift to him, yes, technically curing himself and reviving himself? Or is he always going to be a monster? That's the cool thing. And yes, the question mark remains is, as he's evolving, does he get to a point where he's no longer any kind of resemblance of a human? Yes, you can say becoming a vampire would make him look kind of human-like and he can walk amongst the people, but what if he evolves again and becomes, I don't know, a dragon? Suddenly he can't be with the humans anymore. So there is like those little interesting question marks being thrown in there, and I like how it's, again, kind of advancing his body and making him stronger. But yeah, it's been good so far, and I think with the first 3 episodes, I've gotten plenty enough that it is intriguing me enough. I'm curious to see where this is going next. I'm curious to see how Lorraine can possibly help him to find a cure. What is he going to find in this boss chamber that he's found within this whole kind of secret chamber? Will he get double-crossed? Will somebody, reveal his identity? All those question marks are coming up that I'm kind of intrigued by and interested to see where it goes from here. So yeah, kind of a pleasant surprise, honestly, this season was Unwanted Undead Adventurer. I really was coming to the show expecting really nothing, and I'm getting something. Now, granted, similar to things like Berserker Gluttony and a lot of shows like this, they kind of open up with an interesting concept, but will it go anywhere from here? That's the massive question mark. But that's my thoughts on Unwanted Undead Adventurer so far. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what you think of the series or if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate everybody does, and y'all take care.